So we'll do a quick quiz here to kind of go over some basic C++ concepts. So just kind of follow along as best as you can and try to answer it at your own pace, and I'll kind of explain things as I go and explain why the right answers are the right answers. So we have question one here, which is why is using namespace std often avoided in large professional projects, especially in headers, right? And so we have a few different options here. The first being it is deprecated in modern C++, which is obviously not true. B, it makes the program run slower. Also not really true to any like noticeable degree. It increases the compiled executable size. Well, technically every little bit of data as far as bits and bytes increases the compiled executable size, but using namespace std wouldn't do it like to a pretty large degree, as it's already kind of factored into the general compilation process. Just a lot of the basic headers. I mean, unless you're doing some super high optimizations, this is never really going to be a concern for you. And then D being it can cause name collisions if multiple libraries define functions with the same names. This is really kind of the option you would want to lean more towards. The reason you wouldn't use this namespace in a large professional project is because a lot of the default ones have like names that are pretty, what's the word I'm looking for, not really good, but just better practice and kind of pretty communicative of their purpose. So D would be, the most correct answer here. And so moving on to the question two, which declaration makes read-only integer constant whose type is deduced from 100? So obviously just reading this, we, want to focus on the fact that it's a declaration, a read-only integer, and a constant, and a type that is deduced, at compile time. So we know type deduction is going to be handled by auto. If it's a read-only integer constant, then we're obviously going to want to use the const keyword. And so all those together, so it's probably going to be auto const, and then, maybe some variable that we, of course, aren't really going to know, but we just kind of have to match it against A, B, C, and D. So const limit, it's missing the auto, so this is not going to work. Auto const, not, we just have the keyword on the left side of the equals operator, or rather the initialization operator, so, or the declaration operator. So this is not going to work. Auto limit is missing the const. So we have const auto limit equals 100. So this one is the most correct and going to be the answer. So now we have a question three, which is write a function celsiusToFahrenheit that takes a double representing Celsius and returns a double representing Fahrenheit. And the formula that they give us is that Fahrenheit is equal to C times 9.0 divided by 5.0 plus 32.0. So again, we want a double here. So there's a few different ways that we can handle this. The one I'm going to do is going to favor more terseness and more conciseness. So what I'm going to do, so I think the way that you might naturally think of handling this is probably that you're going to want to create some double, or rather you could take the double that we're given here in the function declaration there, and we can take C and we can just set that equal to C times, just use the formula they have there, 9.0 divided by 5.0, and then add that to 32.0, right? And then you would obviously just return C. I think that's probably one of the more like standard ways you might think of doing it. You could also do, create a variable double F, and then have that, use the double that we take in from the function, and then obviously do the same thing again, 9.0 divided by 5.0 plus 32.0, and then of course at that point we just return F. And I mean, obviously either one would work, right? I believe if you submit this, these tests should pass. We just wait a second here for the code runner to go. Yep, that should pass just fine. But the way that, a lot of times you'll probably end up handling it as you get more comfortable is, you probably want to just, you don't really want to have to waste any extra overhead, right? There's no need to declare any extra variables or, I mean, what we do here where we just do like this. And again, this one would work just fine too, right? D plus 32.0, right? This is kind of an unnecessary line. You can do it, it's more readable, but I would just recommend, you skip that altogether, right? Because you can just return, the whole darn operation at once, right? And if we submit that, that should pass as well in terms of fulfilling the requirement of the function. Yeah, you'll see that everything passes, we get the right thing. So I would recommend this practice more often than not. But I mean, again, you can handle it however you want. It's just, adding that extra overhead of some extra variables in the declaration isn't really necessary, right? So moving on to question number 4, we have what is the deduced type of result in this code? So let's take a quick look here at what we have. We have an int a declared at the value of 5, or rather initialized at a value of 5. We have a double b initialized a value of 2.0, and then we have auto result equals a times b, right? And so the auto keyword is going to have the compiler deduce the result, or deduce the type of the result variable at compile time, and generally it's going to prefer, the compiler is going to prefer, using the double in this case instead of the int. So it's going to actually use, the doubles type, so it's going to pick it as a double. That's, going to be your answer here. So you look here, auto obviously doesn't work. That's the keyword for actually deducing the type. Int's not going to work because we already said that's going to be double. So double is what's going to work. It's not going to be float, obviously, because that wasn't even used here. And we see that that is correct. So we have question 5 here. Write a function formatPrice that takes an int dollars and int cents and returns a string like $5.99. And you would want to assume that cents is always exactly 2 digits, so 0 to 99. Use the toString function to convert integers to strings. So again, a lot of different things we can do here for this. We're just going to use the namespace std just to keep things a little bit terse. So of course, the first thing you want to do is kind of make a little guard against, inputs past 100. There's a few different ways we can do this. I'm not too concerned with making it like super protective. There's a little bit different ways you can do that. Probably the best way is, with some modular arithmetic guarding against any values, that aren't, between 0 and 99. But for now, we're just gonna, pretend that probably, their user will enter in, numeric values. So we'll just say if, cents, because that's the variable there, is greater than, 99, because then that would mean that it would be 3 digits. Then we'll say, cout, please enter a value between 0 and 100, right? And so that'll be a little protection there. But besides that, obviously we want to, print a formatted price, right? So again, a lot of different ways you can do this, especially if your plan is to make it readable, right? If you wanted to make it readable, you probably want to, especially with something as simple as this, you probably just want to like have, I don't know, a string first, and then a string second, right? And then set that equal to, toString dollars, and then add, a decimal character, because again, we're going to need that decimal character right there to separate the dollars and the cents. And so then you can do, toString, what's it, cents, and then, yeah, that should be good, I believe. And then, yeah, that'll be, this should write already. We'll have our dollar amount, so it'll be 5.99. So we just need the dollar character is all we really need here. So, we could do like, say, string formatted price and set that equal to, the dollar character plus first plus second, right? And then we just return formatted price. I think this is like kind of the way you might, it'll be easiest for you. Do note that I did write this question a little bit awkwardly. This is, ideally what you're going to want to make, but for this test to pass, it actually wants you to include the quotation marks, which is obviously never going to happen in real life. You're never going to want to actually show that. I can show you though how you would do that. It would just be you just escape that character, and then sorry, I forgot to add this here, and then same thing here, just escape that character, and then now this test should pass. You see here, and yeah, there you go. So it shows the actual like full thing. So again, this would probably be like the more human readable version to write this. But again, you want to kind of focus on terseness and not declaring like unnecessary variables that have to be, you know, tracked and worried about by the compiler. So you can do this a lot more tersely with this, because again, what are we really declaring right in here, right? We're really just, you know, truncating these operations and just assigning them a variable just to make it easier for us to keep track of, but we don't really need this, right? We could, in theory, again, just return it all at once. We just clear all of that up, right? So I replace this formatted price, right, with, you know, that, and then plus, what is it? Dollars, oops, dollar, or rather, sorry, not dollars, but two string dollars. And then, let me see, plus dot, plus, what is it? Two string cents, and then plus that, right? And doing all of that is basically what we did before, just again, without the overhead of all the extra variables. And you'll see, oh, what did I mess up here? And I'll get rid of the headache right there. We might run into the same issue. Oh, nope, that worked. Move on to question 6. After the input value fails because the user entered letters for a double, what does standard cin.clear do? And so the clear method, it just clears the input buffer stream. Basically, it doesn't fully reset the state. It'll just, or rather, it resets the stream failure state, but it doesn't actually discard or consume the bad text is a better word we should say. We would need the ignore method to do that. So the answer is A. Doesn't convert the bad text into 0. Again, this is just the clear just affects the failure state. It just gets rid of that, but it doesn't consume, again, the bad text. It doesn't do any of this over here. And we see that that's the correct answer, and I believe in the explanation resets, and then ignore is still needed to consume the incompatible buffered input, right? So again, that's needed there. And so for question 7, we have write a function isEven that takes an int n and returns bool true if even, false if odd. So for this, we're definitely going to want to use some modular arithmetic here, or rather the modulus operator, because all we're doing, you know, is we're just going to do a simple check, like if what's the n? So literally just n modulus 2 is equal to 0, then return true, and then else. Yeah, there we go. Return false, right? And that should work. Definitely more elegant ways to do this, but again, this is just introductory, so you probably don't know some of the other better ways to do this, but this is a pretty simple way to accomplish it, because for this, what this is doing is this is just saying if the integer that we're given is divisible by 2, because when we use the modulus operator, it's going to, you know, discard everything but the remainder. So if the remainder is a non-zero value, then that means it is not divisible by 2. So it would obviously be an odd, and thus it would return false. But, you know, if it does return no remainder or a 0, then it's going to return true, and that's going to say that it's even. So this is something that you'll use a lot, especially when it comes to like indexing, you know, in loops and whatnot, and arrays and traveling through it. That'll be like a good way to like mark certain things, you know, odds and evens and whatnot. So you want to kind of remember this particular operator. It'll come back quite a bit. But so moving on to question 8, what is the correct declaration for a constant integer value representing the maximum score of 100? So correct declaration for constant integer value. So again, we're declaring a constant integer value and for representing some maximum score, right? So again, keywords here are constant and integer. So we're going to want const int, right? And then const int whatever, of course we want to name the variable, and we'll set that equal to 100. So we look here, const int max score equals 100. That works. Int max score equals 100 const. This is not legal. You don't put the const keyword on the right side over here. It would go before the int. You use the const keyword on the actual variable that you are declaring. Int const is the, again, not the right sequence, not the right syntax. And then of course, setting the max score equal to 100 after this is perfectly fine, but this is the problem here. And then const max score equals 100. We didn't actually use any variable, and we didn't use auto, so this wouldn't work either. I would not like this. This wouldn't work, so answer would be A. And then which data type uses exactly 1 byte of memory? This is going to be the car, and C++, data type that uses exactly 1 byte of memory, or 8 bits, is going to be the car. Or char, I believe most people say, but I like car. If a user types hello world and hits enter, what does the following code print? So we have the declared string word, then we have the C input using the loading operator, and then we have the C out for the word variable. So this is basically taking an input, storing it in the word variable, and then the cout is going to print the value that's stored in the word using the operator overloading, right? And so the important thing to note is that cout, or rather cin, is only going to take up until the first white space. So anything after hello is not going to be stored within the word, the string word, right? So only hello is going to be put in there. So when we actually print out word, it's literally just going to print hello. It's not going to print out hello world. It's not going to print out hello white space. It's not going to print out anything after that. So the correct answer, but it's still valid. So again, the only issue is just actually on the programming side. This is just not correct design. If you want to get the whole thing, you're going to want read line or get line, I should say. So hello would be the right answer, and that's the entire quiz.